Chapter 3, Homework 1, 3-9. Graph each line below on the same set of axes, so I'll start with a red. The first thing to do is identify the slope and the y-intercept. The slope is 3, and the y-intercept is -3. The y-intercept is the number at the end. Okay, and the slope is a whole number, but think of it as a fraction, 3 over 1. That's rise of 3, run of 1. So go to the y-axis, find -3, that's the starting value or y-intercept. And then to get the next point, use your slope. Rise of 3, and then I filled in the 1, run of 1. Rise of 3, run of 1. Alright, line number 2, find the slope, find the y-intercept. The slope is a fraction, don't forget the negative sign, that's -2 over 3. And then the y-intercept is, this time it's going to be +3. Okay, don't forget the slope is rise over run. Since it is negative, we are going to rise by going down 2 and moving to the right 3. So let's start at the y-intercept, go to the y-axis, start at the 3 that they give you, and then use that slope, go down to right 3. Use that slope to find the next point. Go down to right 3. Oops. And that's how you do this one. I'll let you do the third and last line. Graph that. 3-13, draw a slope triangle. Use it to write the equation of a line shown in the graph at the right. So maybe you can write the equation. I'll help you get started. Let's get the slope. There's no grid lines, so just go ahead and draw a triangle. And you need to figure out the rise and the run. So if you look at the x-coordinates, that's 2, that's 4, just like the numbers 2 and 4 that they give you. So that means that delta x, or the run, is equal to 2. And then, this one's, you can't really tell unless you look at the numbers on this one. The numbers are 9 and 16. And 16 minus 9 is 7. So that means the rise, or delta y, is equal to 7. To calculate the slope from the triangle, they use the letter m. M is equal to rise divided by run. Alright, and then next what you need to do is you pick one of the points. You've got 2 points. Let me pick a smaller number, the one with the smaller numbers, so 2, 9. And then you need to figure out what's the y-intercepts. And the way you do that is you take y equals mx plus b. That's your equation you want to make. Put in the slope. Y equals 7 over 2x plus b. And then you put in the point for x and y, solve for b, just like we did in class. Check your notes, we have some examples in the notes, like that one. So the final answer is going to be y equals 7 over 2x plus some number. You have to find that number. 3-19, determine which transformation was used. So for this one, this is a mirror image. We call that a reflection. This one looks like it just slid over, and the ones that slide over are called translation. And we have one more on this page. It's not really a mirror image, so it's not a reflection. It didn't just slide over because it kind of turned. So when you have one of these that kind of turns as it slides over, it is called a rotation. Rotation. I spelled that wrong. For the ones that turn, that's a rotation. So now you get to try D, E, and F on your own. F, you need to have 2 to 3 answers. It's not just one transformation. It's 2 or 3 transformations. Alright, Jamila, 3-20, wants to play a game called Guess My Line. Here are the hints that Jamila gives you. 2 points on the line are that and that. So there's a graph here, and it says a graph may help, so why not? Let's put on 1, 1, and 2, 4. Remember, the x-coordinate comes first. That's 2 on the x-axis, 4 on the y-axis. Those are our 2 points. All right, so that's kind of our line. How do we get the slope? Well, let's try making a slope triangle. The run, or delta x, is 1. The rise is count the spaces. There are 3 spaces. So the slope, m, is equal to rise divided by run. 3 divided by 1 is 3. All right, and now you need to get the y-intercept, and my line was very inaccurate. So up 3 over 1, that means if you're working backwards, you need to go down 3 and to the right 1, down 3 to the right 1. That would continue the trend of this line, working backwards. So if you work backwards, you can see that -2 is the y-intercept. I'll let you write the equation for that one. Domain and range. Let's start with this one, 3-22. The domain, going from left to right. You can see that going towards the right, there's an arrow, and going towards the left, it goes down, but it keeps going left forever. So the domain is -infinity to infinity. Remember, domain is left to right. And the way we say that in math, when you have -infinity to infinity, it's all real numbers. All right, for the range, it's bottom to top, B to T. So if you start at the bottom of the graph, there's an arrow that goes down forever. So that's -infinity down there. Now, if you keep going up forever, you have a positive infinity, but this graph kind of levels off. As you can see, it goes up and up and up and up and up, and it never really passes 1. So for range, you would write -infinity at the bottom to 1 at the top. If you want to write it with inequalities, you can say x is less than 1, but this is a little more advanced. So I'd recommend you stick with this one for now until we get to chapter 9. We'll talk about that more in chapter 9. Okay, and let's do this one. So on this graph, domain is left to right. On the left, on the x-axis, -3 is as far left as it goes. And if you go right, it goes all the way to infinity. Again, if you want to use more advanced notation, you don't have to, but you could say x is greater than or equal to -3. We'll talk more about that in chapter 9. For the range, range is bottom to top. So if you start on the bottom, how low does it go? Well, it doesn't go any lower than -2. 2, this one, notice how it slants up and it keeps going up, and you can imagine it'll keep going up and up forever. Unlike the last one, where it slanted up and then it leveled off. So this one is actually going to go up to infinity. And then again, advanced notation. You can try the other two. 324. Okay, I like to write these out as separate fractions. 4 over 20 times z to the power -3 over z to the power -1. 4 goes into 20 5 times, and 4 goes into itself 1 time. So the fraction in the front is 1 over 5. Times. When you divide two numbers, you need to subtract the exponents. So it's -3 subtract -1. And when you are subtracting a negative number, that turns into a big plus sign. So it's 1 over 5 times z raised to the power -2. -3, and then you add 1 to it, so it gets closer to 0 on the number line. So that goes to -2. Okay, but we're not done yet, because when you have a negative exponent, you cross the line and change the little sign. just like that. And at the end of the day, 1 times 1, multiply across the top. That's going to be 1 over 5 times z squared. C. Let's go inside the parentheses. This is 6 raised to the power 1. G raised to the power 3. Okay, when you have a power raised to a power, you multiply. So that's 6 to the power 1 times negative 3 is negative 3. And then g to the power, multiply, 3 times negative 3 is negative 9. Both of these are negative, so they both need to cross the line and change the little sign. Okay, the last thing you can do, 6 to the power 2 is 6 times 6, which is 36. And 6 to the power 3 is 6 times 6 times 6. So we need to multiply by 6 again. Use your calculator if you can't do 6 to the power 3. 6 to the power 3, 6 times 6 times 6 is 216. There's your answer. Don't forget to do B. That's not B, I just ran out of space on A. 3-32. Robert believes the lines are perpendicular, but Mario is not convinced. What's the slope of each line? Well, let's figure that out. So I'm going to pick a corner point with this first line and draw a slope triangle. If I'm going from left to right, I go down 3, right 2. So negative 3, 2. Versus, let's do the other one. This is a good point to pick for the other one. So is that, another corner point. Draw your slope triangle. Left to right, you're going right 2, up 1. So the slope is going to be rise divided by run. 1 divided by 2. That's a half. So leave it like that. Okay. Perpendicular slopes. Do you remember? So for a perpendicular slope, if you took, for example, do an example here, negative 3 over 2, if you want to make that perpendicular, you turn it upside down, and you flip the sign. This one's negative, and that stays positive. So, these two are perpendicular. Now let's compare our two slopes. Are these two slopes perpendicular? Are they upside down and opposite sign from each other? If not, they are not perpendicular. So please explain, are they perpendicular? Use the slope and the pattern described here. Please explain. Yes or no? And you can check your notes on that one. We have some notes on it. Okay, 3-34. Write an equation for the tile pattern. I'm going to make a little table. Figure number, number of tiles. Okay, so I'll go 0 to 5. Figure 1, we have 11 tiles. And then for this one, remember that the figure numbers are on the x-axis. So if you find figure 3 on the x-axis, you've got a line going up to 7. So figure number 3 has 7 tiles. And then you fill in the blank. You can see that 2's missing, so if it were to go with the constant growth, that would have to be a 9. 11, 9, 7, 5, 3, right? Which would mean the pattern going back to the left would be 13. Write an equation. Fill in the blank. I'll let you do that. What is the growth? And what is the starting value? Okay. For this one, we've got A to be negative 3, 4. We're going to plot it on the graph paper and then connect it in the order given. That's A. B is 1, 6. C is 5 comma negative 2, 5 comma negative 2, and D is 1, negative 4. Connect in the order given, so that's A, B, C, D. And if you connect it back to A, now you have a rectangle. Alright, we're going to rotate this clockwise, this direction, 90 degrees, it says, about the origin. So take your patty paper, take it out, you need to, lay it down, you draw a plus sign at the origin, and you trace the figure onto your patty paper. And I'll just do the first point, you can do the rest. So negative 3, 4 moves over to here. That's A prime. And the coordinates of A prime are going to be 4, 3. So they'll do the same for B. You need to use patty paper, rotate it around the origin, finish that one off, redraw the figure, get the new coordinates. 3/48. We need to write an equation. So I guess I'll do A and then talk about C. Alright, for a line that goes through the points given. Step 1, find the slope. Subtract the y coordinates. Remember, it is x comma y, x comma y. So if we subtract the y coordinates, that is 10 minus 4. And since we're going from left to right, we should also go from left to right for the x's. So negative 7 subtract 1. So I subtract the y's, subtract the x's, make a fraction, y's go on top. 10 minus 4 is 6, and on the bottom, negative 7 minus 1 is negative 8. You can divide both of these by 2, because they're even. 6 divided by 2 is 3, over 8 divided by 2 is 4, and the whole thing is negative. So my equation is y equals mx plus b. I just found the slope. So now I have y equals negative 3 over 4x plus b. And let's use a point. I like this point because the numbers are smaller. Y coordinate is 4, so that gets dropped in for y. The x coordinate is 1, so that gets dropped in for 1. Okay, 4 equals negative 3 over 4 times 1. Well, any number times 1 is itself. So that's going to be 4 equals negative 3 over 4 plus b. And 3 divided by 4, that's 0.75. Let's make this one easier to think about. 4 equals negative 0.75 plus b. To make b alone, what I would need to do is add 0.75 on each side. That makes a 0 pair, so that's gone. All that's left is b equals 4.75 because we're adding it. That's our starting value. That's our slope. Our equation is y equals negative 3 over 4x plus 4.75. You might be thinking we're mixing fractions and decimals, so if you want, you can turn this back into a fraction. You don't have to. They're both correct. Okay, please do B. Let's talk about C. A line with a slope of 0 that passes through the point 6, negative 11. So they give you the slope, y equals mx plus b. That's going to be y equals 0x plus b. And if you plug in x and y, x is 6, y is negative 11. The thing is, 0 times 6 is just 0. 0 times anything is 0. So you have negative 11 equals 0 plus b, which means that this is not really doing anything. B is negative 11. So you have a slope, you have a y-intercept, go ahead and write the equation on that one. 3-49. For this function, evaluate. Let's do f of 9. F of 9 is equal to the square root of 3 times x, whatever x is, so 3 times 9, and then take away 2. 3 times 9 is 27, and we're supposed to take away 2 from that. So square root, make sure you're writing square root, square root, square root, and then at the end, you square root the number, and the square root of 25 is 5. So when you input 9, the output should be 5. How about D? Square root of 3 times 0 minus 2, input 0 for x. Now 3 times 0 is still 0. So we have the square root of 0 minus 2. 0 minus 2 is negative 2, and this one is undefined. You can't square root a negative number. 3-50. Okay, let's do A. This one we haven't solved too many of these like this in class, so what you need to think about is make x alone. X is divided by 8. The opposite of divide is multiply. Opposite of divide is multiply, so let's multiply both sides by 8. When you multiply x by 8, then divide by 8, they cancel out, leaving just x. On the right-hand side, if you multiply by 8, that's kind of like multiplying by 8 over 1. So you multiply across the top, 3 times 8 is 24, 4 times 1 is 4, so x is equal to 24 divided by 4, x is equal to 6. Alright, B. This one also, not a lot of discussion about it, so let me do this as an example. When you have a negative sign in the front of parentheses, you need to distribute that negative sign. So it's 5x minus x plus negative 1. And when you add a negative number, like adding negative 1, that's the same as subtraction. So this is 4x, 5x minus x is 4x. 4x minus 1 equals 5 minus 2x. I've got x on both sides. I'm going to add 2x to make a 0 pair. That's a 0 pair, that cancels. 4x plus 2x is 6x minus 1 equals 5. Almost there. We need to make x alone. Let's add 1 to each side. That's going to make a 0 pair, and I get 6x equals 6. And then let me divide both sides by 6. X equals 1. 3-56. Graph, answer. Use the word slope. Part A. This is the y-intercept. That's the slope. Step 1, go to the y-axis. Plot that point, y-intercept 4, and then rise over run, up 1 over 3. Up 1 over 3. And then I will also graph B, so I can answer this question about it. Let's graph B. So with B, you have a y-intercept of 4 and a slope of negative 3. Don't forget that negative 3, that's the same as negative 3 over 1. So what you do is you go to 4 on the y-axis, that's the y-intercept, and you go down 3, right 1. Down 3, right 1. That's the slope. Rise over 1. Since the rise is negative, we'll go down 3 and then over to the right 1. Okay, what is the relationship between A and B? This is B, that's A. And I say that this is 90 degrees in the middle. This is a perpendicular situation. Here's why. So check your notes, of course. But if you look at 1 over 3, That's this slope, and this one is negative 3 over 1. The slopes are opposite sign. One's positive, one's negative. And there was one more condition for perpendicular. They have to have opposite sign, and they have to be upside down, which we call in math reciprocal. So their slopes are opposite sign and reciprocal, therefore they are perpendicular. It's not enough to just look at the graph. The graph is helpful, but you need to actually look at the slopes to figure this out. Okay, you need to graph C and then answer this question, 357. While solving this equation, Nathan noticed that x is divided by 6. What can he do to get x alone? Well, the opposite of dividing by 6, the opposite of division by 6 is times by 6. So what he needs to do is multiply both sides by 6. Since it's dividing by 6, you undo it by multiplying by 6. So here's how you do that. You do 6 times on the left, 6 times on the right, and on the left, 6 times x divided by 6 cancels. When you divide a number by 6 and then multiply it by 6, you get the same number. So it's going to be x equals, and on the right hand side, multiplying by 6, kind of like multiplying by 6 over 1. That's 30 over 2. Let's multiply across the top. 5 times 6, 30. 2 times 1, 2. And 30 divided by 2. X equals 15. Try C, same process. X divided by 10. So what do you multiply by? Okay. Draw and label. So let me redraw this. Okay, it's only half the shape that has a graph of y equals 1 as a line of symmetry. Y equals 1. That means go to the y-axis. Special case, you remember that y equals 1 is a horizontal line? Go to the y-axis, find 1, draw the line. Alright, draw the completed shape below, label the coordinates of the missing vertices. Line of symmetry, that's a mirror image. So this is going to get mirrored and flipped over that line. Just like that. It says draw and label the coordinates. So I'm going to label this one with its coordinates. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. X coordinate is 5 and the y coordinate is -1. 2, -1. Okay, so that was that one. Okay, this one got a little chopped off. I hope it's better on your homework. We're going to graph the line through the point with that slope. So let's put this point on there first, 0, -2. And then here's our slope. That's up 4 over 3. Up 4 over 3. Alright, the equation of the line, y equals the growth times x plus the starting value, -2. Instead of adding -2, I can just write -2. That's the same thing. Alright, so I'll do B and part of D, and then you'll have to do C on your own. So for B, translate the graph up 4 and to the right by 3. So if I start at this point, let me move this point up 4 and to the right by 3. That goes here. And then if I move the blue point up 4 and over 3, back on the line. If I move this blue point up 4 and over 3, back on the line. So it turns out you get the same line. Since it's the same as the slope, you get the same line. So for D, they're the same line. They have the same slope and starting value. Same slope and same starting value. Since it's the same line, they both have a starting value at -2. Okay, for part E, you're supposed to write a line that is perpendicular to these lines and passes through this point. So let's get the slope. The slope of these lines is 4/3. Now if I want to make it perpendicular, the perpendicular slope is you take the original slope, you flip it upside down. This one's positive, so the perpendicular slope should be negative. So our line needs to have a slope of -3/4, and it needs to pass through the point 12,7. I'll let you finish this one, but here's a hint. Write y equals mx plus b, substitute in the new slope, and then what do you do with this point? How can you find what the starting value is? 3-70. Write the equation of the line. Okay, we're missing some info. It goes -2, -1. We're missing 0 and 1. Then it goes up to 2 and 3. Well, let's use these points to find the slope. The change in y is equal to, subtract them and you get 3. And then the change in x is, let's subtract them and you get 1. So the slope, m, equals the change in y divided by the change in x, which is just 3. Alright, so 1, when x is 1, this should be 2, right? Because it's going up by 3. So using that same kind of logic, what would the 0 value be? What would the y-intercept be? The initial value? So go ahead and find it. Fill in the blank. What is the starting value? Finish the equation. 372. This looks like the last one. We made it. I'm going to do 3. You can do the other 3. Okay, let's start with this. F of x equals 7 plus absolute value of x. So f of -5 is 7 plus absolute value of -5. Now the absolute value of -5 is just 5, but it's positive now. So the answer to A is 12. Let's try, this is actually a tricky one, E. So we have, for G, x cubed minus 5. We need to cube the input and then subtract 5. So it's going to be -2 cubed, take away 5, and don't forget about PEMDAS. We want to do the exponent first. So -2 cubed is -2 times -2 times -2, and then at the end we'll subtract 5. 2 times 2 is 4. Negative times negative is positive. So that's 4, but I still need to multiply by -2 again. And because this is positive and that's negative, it goes back to -8. So -2 cubed, if you didn't know this, -2 cubed is actually -8. So all that just to find -8, and then we still have to take away 5 because of the x cubed minus 5. Cube the number, then subtract 5. So the answer is going to be -13. Let's do this one, g of 0. Same function, we cube the input, 0, we cube it, and then we take away 5. 0 times 0 times 0, take away 5. 0 times 0 is 0. Times 0, it's still 0, so this is just 0, take away 5. Answer, -5.